Hi everyone, here we are at Ask Anything for our ŌNCE Club members. It's a chance to connect with your other ŌNCE Club members, or if there's anything that you want to ask from a curious point of view, or if there's something that you need help with regards to your career, to a client, maybe you are in need of a particular service or a connection with a brand or something like that, this is, I think, the best place to do it. I'll be here from 2 until 2:30, and we can all just chit chat, I suppose, and talk to each other. So you can raise a hand, or you can answer in the Q&A or in the chat option. It's up to you, or the Q&A option, completely up to you. But I'm looking forward to your questions, and I'll be here. One of our comments here is, at what point does a personal shopper go solo? I think that's a great question. I think it really comes down to when it's right for you, when it's the right time. I think only you can know. Typically, I think, with this job, depending on how long you've been, it's really about the love of the job. And I think if it's still serving you in the same way, it's very easy for you to kind of go through a progressive structure, I suppose. And it's very easy to kind of think that the next step should be management or some sort of senior role, etc. But more often than not, I find a lot of people who end up going down that route end up actually feeling like it's not for them. Being an amazing personal shopper doesn't always necessarily mean that you are an amazing manager, and that doesn't mean that that's bad. It just means that that's not necessarily, I wouldn't even say your skill set. I think there's, anyone can sort of do it, but I think your love for it and being a manager is very different from being a love of a personal shopper. And I've done both. And to be honest, I like both, but I do miss when I'm managing a team or sort of heading up a team. I miss sometimes being the person, the person who gets to talk to the clients, the person who gets to be the problem solver in that respect. There are so many things that you just, don't get to do because you have to manage, sometimes up to 30 people. And that's everything from lunch to holidays to HR things to actually just making sure that they have resources and tools, which is a very different job to sort of being able to kind of meet your clients all around the world and provide them with, have the conversations and the communications that you want. So I would normally say, if you're thinking about going solo and you're thinking when's the right time, I think about your relationships, thinking about the current connections that you have now. Is it something that you think that you could take outside of your current organization and keep growing, or even not necessarily to grow? Do you think you would be able to actually be able to maintain a lifestyle with what you do and think about? And I think you have to be really strategic. Having a love for the job is just not enough. You have to know that sometime you have to see where the ROI is, the return on investment. Are you going to be able to put in the same amount of time to be able to actually equate the right type of money? Do you have the type of clientele? Do you want to, are you going to be able to kind of, live essentially? And what does that mean in terms of being able to do that? You can flesh it out and be really strategic with that. So I think it's always down to you. I think it's if you're still in love with the job, but maybe not in love with your organization or your corporation, or you think you can do more with, with having a little bit more freedom, because sometimes, as much as we have some of these organizations, Natchez and Net-a-Porter, Farfetch, they're fantastic in terms of the reach and the access, but they all have their limitations to a certain extent. So you being solo means that you can pivot in lots of different ways, and I think that's always a an amazing thing to be able to do. And I think if you have the drive and the will to kind of go for it, then you should go for it. But I don't think there's any particular point. I think it's really about you assessing if you're really happy where you are, and if you think you can be happier doing something else, and then fleshing out the plan for that. But don't think you have to have all the answers either, because I don't think you can. And if you knew all the answers now, you probably wouldn't do it. That's the truth of the matter. And that's what I hear from a lot of people who have either gone on their own or started a company. They're thankful for the fact that they kind of went in almost somewhat naively, because it's allowed them to kind of, you know, figure out solutions where maybe there wouldn't have been one before. It's pushed them, it's given them the determination, the drive to keep going. And that's what I think. How do you feel with a client who is making the wrong purchase or styling choice, and you know that, but he or she loves that product? That is a great question. What I would say to that is you can only do so much, really. But it's important to be, I think, always honest with a client, but absolutely professional. I think you can always be transparent, but I think if you're good at your job, you should be able to, again, provide a solution instead of a challenge to a problem. So in my experience, when there's something that a client absolutely loves and I'm not sure, we go down a few things. First of all, if I don't like it in terms of a personal choice, then that's a personal choice. I don't have to like it, but they have to look good in it. They have to feel good, and I have to think about, whether or not this is a good fit for them. Does it, meet their narrative? And so sometimes this is difficult, I think, depending on if you're online or offline, because when you're offline and you can see the person, usually you're going to be able to see there and then instantly whether or not this is good, whether this is bad, see the things that maybe they don't always see, and walk around it. So for example, typically if something doesn't look good or what have you, it's not the client, and it's not even sometimes the piece. It's just it's just a bad fit. It's just not the piece. And usually it's a tailoring. Sometimes it's just, this particular piece fits high in the waist and that client needs something that's a little lower in the waist. This particular item might be closed up in the front and they might need something that allows them to show their breastbone, whatever. There's always usually these little tricks. And so it's about being able to point out these specifics that allows a customer to direct them in the right way, and then also being able to provide them with an alternative. There's no point just saying this looks wrong because we don't want to have any type of BMW conversations here, which is a body made wrong type of feeling. We want to empower them with understanding who they are in terms of what their body looks like and what that means in terms of fit for clothes. There's lots of things that I do not wear because I'm short-bodied and long-legged with a wide hip, and this just means that some things just don't work for me, and I have to find something that will. And sometimes I have to accept that maybe that item doesn't exist right now, which is why maybe bespoke and tailoring is also an option for a client. So in that respect, I always want to tell them exactly what I'm looking at and why I think that is not necessarily working for them in the most positive way. Then I will show them some alternatives. If it's shop floor based, it's a lot easier said than done, because usually you're able to actually physically show them in the real time. Sometimes being an online personal shopper means that you're having to kind of take a bit of a gamble. And ideally, your customer really, really well. But if you don't, then I think usually you're probably going off of your gut instinct. So for example, if you have a client who's a UK 16 to 18 and they want to purchase something that runs small, and usually that size would run more like a UK 12, then you have that conversation with saying, I know that this fits really small. I think you can find a better style in this particular brand in your size where you're going to feel comfortable. If it comes down to a client, though, who loves the item, thinks that they look fantastic, and there's not much you can do about it, then again, I think if you have a great rapport with that client, or you want to always build a great rapport, I absolutely stand in the face of being like, listen, I think if you love it, if you want to wear it, this is what's going to make your heart sing, this is what's going to make you happy, then you should go for it, because I think that's what it comes down to regardless. It doesn't mean that I necessarily think that that would be my choice for you, but I think if you love it and you feel really happy, that's how you have to go. And essentially that's what it comes down to. I don't lie to clients. I'd rather send them something else or send them an alternative. And I think in that case, I've had better relationships with my clients going forward, because I've been able to say to them, you would look amazing, but you could look better, or I think this is something I could help you with looking much better in, or this is probably not the best brand. Or sometimes it's also that they haven't seen the product, but I have, and I know that, you know, and I've done this before, working in a Net-a-Porter and such, and, you know, advising a client who really wants to buy a £2,000, £3,000 blouse, and I've seen the blouse and I'm like, listen, you know, the quality isn't great, the fit's not fantastic, let's find something else. And, you know, because I could never feel comfortable with selling something that I don't think is necessarily of value for that customer. It's not really about the brand or the brand's price. It's just being, you know, equating what the client wants, how the client wants to wear it, knowing that person, and ensuring that they can really make sure that, that, you know, they always feel good and they always feel that you're advising them in the right way, as opposed to steering them down a wrong path, getting the piece and realizing, you know, she should have known better, or he should have known better. And it breaks a bit of a bond, it breaks a trust, and it means that sometimes that client doesn't come back to you, or you don't necessarily get to build upon that relationship that you were hoping to build upon. And I think in general, like if we're talking about building trust with a customer, it's super, super important regardless. I think you have to, I actually spoke with someone today who is been with clients from a really long, you know, who's been client facing for years and years, and he works in a bespoke element, and he sort of said something today that made sense. It's like, he goes, I think in these cases you sell 90% of yourself and 10% of the product. And I think that's so true. I think with personal shoppers, more than any other type of client facing role, you're really banking on building a relationship with these people. So it's important to ensure that they understand who you are and who your personality is, and that you stand by a certain type of integrity, a standard. And so if you're not that person, if you're not right for them, then you're not right for them, and that's okay. But I think if you're always able to stand by who you are, rather than trying to change yourself for every customer, I think you'll yield much better results, and you'll always have a much stronger client base. I have clients sometimes who I don't talk to for a year or 2 years, and then out of the blue, because we always sort of, you know, lightly keep in touch, if they need something, or, you know, they're having issues with something or what have you, because, you know, my clients are all over the world, they'll be like, actually, Dominique, haven't spoken to you for ages, can we do XYZ? And it's because they understand that who I am already and what type of shopper I'm always going to be. And, you know, as long as I'm still doing that personal shopping, they're quite happy to kind of come back and here and there. And I think that actually is a testament to kind of what I like to do and how I do it and how I work with my customers in general. Another question. Are there certain types of clients you connect more with culturally or personality wise? And is this something personal shoppers should think about as they build their black book? That's a cool question. I don't think so, actually. I think that I build relationships with customers who I can build relationships with. And with what I mean by that is, you know, regardless of a cultural sense, I think typically, and this isn't always the case, but typically when you're dealing with a high net worth client, well, not actually, because I've dealt with clients all from sort of a high street perspective, but let's use high net worth as an example. Typically, you're already dealing with, regardless of what continent they come from, you're already dealing with a different type of persona. They see the world in a very different way, usually to you. And that doesn't mean that they are, you know, a terrible person, or they or that's a bad thing. It's just different. And so their kind of perspective, their context, etc., is sometimes a very different lens. I always come from a point of learning. So I'm always very fascinated about others instantly. If they're from, depending on where they're from, what they do, what their background is, whether, religion. I mean, I sort of was helping to support a whole region of Middle East at one point. And I was meeting all these women in a very different way than I'd ever met them before. And I had the opportunity to fly to the Middle East on more than one occasion to, I suppose, just to meet clients really and truly, and to kind of connect and engage with them, because we hadn't been able to do that before. And so going to Qatar, for example, first off, and experiencing the clients that I spoke to was a very different experience to speaking to them on the phone. And I found that it was actually really humbling, because I realized I suppose, as much as I thought I knew, I realized I didn't know as much as I thought. I didn't realize how different the GCC is within itself, in terms of, what culture looks like, what's different. Some things are more cultural and traditional. Some things are actually law-based in terms of what they can and can't do, how they dress, where they can go. But the funny thing is, so let's say use Qatar as an example, one of the things that struck me the most is that I met, most of my clients were all in some way an entrepreneur. And that was fantastic. I'd never met so many 22 to 27-year-olds who were all sort of building their own business or had been running their own business. And that was fascinating. I've also had clients who are clients who don't speak a lot of, who don't speak great English in Italy, and we sort of communicate over Google Translate, for example, and they're a lawyer. And it's so it doesn't matter. For me, I find it all just fascinating. I like to meet people who are very different to who I am, because I already know what I know. I'd much rather be interested in something that I don't know. And I think as long as that client is open to also wanting to, share somewhat of themselves, it's fairly easy. That being said, I've also got clients who don't share anything with me at all. And I also quite enjoy that, because it's a different perspective. I've had some great clients who are so incredibly busy that our relationships are very stunted and quick, and but as a testament to what they need, I've made myself available to how they need to work, and that's what I do. So it doesn't make a difference in terms of how I develop a black book, or which clients I want to keep. But the ones I always will sort of want to nurture and keep are the ones that are respectful in the way that I'm sort of respecting them. I believe that, you always treat people how you want to be treated. And I think that when someone does the same for you, it's pretty much easy from there. You've already laid that foundation, because there's a mutual respect, and those are always the clients that you tend to always want to work with again and again and again. And then usually by word of mouth, that's usually how you build your black book, because if they're having a great experience, they usually want their friends and family to also have a similar experience if they're not already. So, but I think that's a very good question. I think also something that I learned very early on as well, when you're sort of managing a black book of clients, that you have to really understand the psychology almost, or the behavior of a client to kind of get the best results, right? So I noticed that from when I was doing shop floor, and I was working at Topshop, personal shopping, and I was meeting an array of different types of clientele. And I mean, everything from 13-year-olds to 50-year-olds, women who were coming for their birthdays, women who were coming after giving birth, women who were just too busy or didn't necessarily or have new jobs. It was, all these different types of women, and young women especially. And sometimes you're coming into a situation where you're having to deal with not just the person who's having the appointment, but their entourage. And I don't use that to be meaning that they have people around them, but just, people come with the best of intentions. I've had women come in for a birthday and all their friends want to come with them, but then that means that you're actually also servicing sometimes 4 other people as well as the actual person you're addressing. Sometimes you have children come in who are like teenagers, but essentially their mum are the ones with the money. So you have to appease the mother as well. And so you start to realize that you have to kind of, you can be yourself and stay in your lane, but you have to kind of adapt your style to those particular needs, because they're going to change here and there. And if you have and if you're online, it's even worse, because clients are much less reticent, or much more reticent, I suppose, that they're much less likely to want to tell you everything, because it's an email, and they just don't think about articulating themselves in that way. So you have to start using, once you've been doing it for a while, you start to realize, this client is not a talker. She doesn't have a lot of time. Like I mentioned a client before, she used to sort of send me one-word emails, but I used to do so much things with her, because I started to realize she knew what she liked. For a start, she was quite happy to tell me what that was, and she was also still open to suggestions. So our conversations usually were once a week, of me sending her things that I knew she would love, things that I thought she might like, and she would reply yes or no, and then I would send them to her. And that was, and that was a great relationship for her, because I could tell that she was extremely, extremely busy, and that's the type of relationship she needed. Whereas I had another great client in Australia, who would send me beautiful emails, really letting me know what she has been up to, what she's doing, where she's been, what she's planning, her children, talking 3 or 4 paragraphs, and somewhere in that is a request for an item, or some kind of, looking for a request for some styling advice. And I used to have to kind of prioritize my day accordingly, because I realized she needed someone to match that. There's no point in her sending me a 3-paragraph email and I just go, here's this item that you asked for, or this is what I suggest you purchase. Otherwise, there's no relationship. It's very impersonal. So I would take the time to tell her a little bit about my life. We weren't, because she was in Australia, we weren't often able to actually speak on the phone. So that was how we connected. And so I would send her, obviously my life was nowhere near as fabulous as hers, but I would absolutely try to let her know who I am, what I've been up to, what I think. We would talk about Real Housewives, for example, these things, and then sort of talk about the actual items that she's requested. And I think that's how you build relationships. And like I said, a lot of these clients, and maybe it doesn't seem like a crazy thing now, but this was before, when you were quite limited to how you're allowed to communicate with your clients outside of work. And a lot of these clients were like finding you at the time on Facebook, which was a huge deal. This is even before I think we did have Instagram, but it wasn't as popular. And so clients were finding you on Facebook. And so now I can sort of say, these people are still clients who are still friends on Facebook, on Instagram, on socials. So even if we don't work together on a day-to-day basis anymore, we're still very much in touch, which I like, because it means that they were interested enough in you, and vice versa, and to kind of share that part of their life with, which I think is always nice. I think that's the special part of personal shopping, really, is that it's like being a hairdresser. You get to know your clients really intimately, even if they don't think, even if you don't realize that that's what you're doing. It is kind of being that little bit of a therapist, but which is quite sweet. And you really get to know them, and they want to get to know you as well. And I think if you're always being honest, and you shouldn't be intimidated as well, to be able to kind of share your life, where you are, because I think that's what they're really attracted to, that human element, the authenticity goes a long, long way, I think. A really good question I was asked, or I'm asked probably the most actually, is how do you manage your list, your black book, and how do you manage your time to kind of, I suppose if you, whether it's making a target because you work in an organization, or a personal, how do you sort of make your money being independent? And with a client book, and now the truth of the matter is, there's no client, no matter how wealthy they are, that will want to spend consistently with you all the time. If you might even have a really good run with them, in the sense that they might shop with you every week for a year. At some point, something sort of has to give, and you find that they tail off. They're not less interested, but they might just slow down. Sometimes they go completely silent, or they, you know, and a good client actually will say, listen, I need to stop for a minute, or I'm done. And so you have to really understand how to work your client book and how to make it work for you, so you're never in a situation where you're never making money. And I used to find that really difficult back in the day, because I was given a client book when I first started out that was essentially a real bag of people who hadn't been developed, yet they were all sort of eligible to be in that sort of personal shopping sphere, but some of them had been avid shoppers, some of them weren't, some of them hadn't, their potential hadn't been tapped in. Sometimes they were one-time shoppers, sometimes they were sale shoppers. And so I had to start really zoning into where to spend the time and how to kind of generate new leads for myself based on what I had. That's something that I've had teams ask me for when I've managed teams, is the girls go, well, I don't have enough clients, or any new clients, or any different type of clients. Truth is, you probably have all the right clients. It's just what you need to bring out of them. Sometimes you absolutely will need new clients, and I think there's never a bad time to do that. But I think any time that you think that you're having a sales slump and you think that the answer is new clients, I very much doubt that. I think a lot of it is having your A list and your B list. And I think A list works in two ways. I think you should always have an A list in terms of who's engaging with you the most, because they might not necessarily making the most money, but they engage with you regularly, and also spend. Not just the ones who are engaging, not spending, and also the ones who spend the most. These are what I would call an A-list. These are the ones that you always want to be in contact with, you want to be kind of continuing relationships with, where you want to spend most of your time, for two reasons. One, you want to have the clients that might not necessarily be turning over the most money are the ones that get you through the quiet months. They're the ones that spend little and often. They really like relationships, and they're probably not, there's usually limitations for whatever reason. Sometimes they're just not huge shoppers. Sometimes their lifestyles don't require them to be buying luxury all the time like that, or what have you. But they obviously like the relationship, and they feel that they need a little bit of support and help, and you can sort of be that person for them and be somewhat of a friend who gives advice. And then, you know, what I find with those clients is that they actually grow a lot more in terms of spend than, say, the clients who start spending really huge from the beginning. So those are the ones who I find when I'm having a quiet month, they come through every single month. And then you have obviously your big spenders, the ones who maybe are time poor, but love to shop, or maybe they come through seasonally. So, you know, a lot of clients might only come through twice a year, but they spend huge. These are clients that you always want to nurture. They're the ones that you probably aim to, both types of clients really are the ones that you want to take out to dinner, you want to do fun things with them, you want to offer them experiences, etc., etc. And then you can have a B list, which is essentially a list that is mixed of infrequent shoppers, but also potential customers who maybe are not at quite a spend that makes sense for you to spend as much time on that sort of A list, but you think that they might be, maybe they require less of you, but they're still a great client. The ones who still need to be, you know, spoken, who still need some sort of communication, but maybe not as often, for example, or the ones who maybe you haven't quite tapped into who they are yet, or what they need, but you're going to. And so what that allows you to do is that when you are having a slightly quieter month, or maybe when you are looking to expand your main lists or your main black book, is that these are the clients that you start testing with. These are the ones that you say, I don't know much about them, so I'm going to send them lots of different types of things to see what resonates. You know, there's always an assumption sometimes where shoppers and stylists think that, oh, because this client has only bought, I don't know, trainers with me, that's the only thing that they want to buy from me, or that's the only thing they're interested in buying, which is typically not the case. I think usually what happens is that they know that you can supply them with that particular product and you do it really well, and that's where they've left it, because you haven't alluded to anything else. And we used to do, I used to have a lot of clients who used to buy certain things with me, and then they would find out that I could also supply them with Hermes, and then our whole relationship would change, because they didn't realize that I was selling them Hermes, or that was something that I could help them with. So it would change the nature of that. Same with fine jewelry. Sometimes even with clients where they wanted to, maybe they want to do more things around wellness and beauty or travel, for example, or if they know that you're open to helping them and supporting with them, and they like that relationship, they actually will come to you. It's just that you have to let them know that that's something that you can do. So I always try to test different things, new things. If I have access to a category that I haven't tried with a particular customer, I definitely want to try that with them. I don't try to do lots at one time. I probably will take 10 to 20 at a time and try to work with them. And in a slightly slower environment, I would probably say I would try to sort of test these different things with that group of clients over 3 months. The reality is that it probably has to be nowadays, because there is just so much more going on. Probably within a month, I would sort of test a few different things and see what resonates, what doesn't. And because of that, sometimes those clients move over and they become a different type of client, or sometimes they don't, because maybe I just haven't quite found the right sort of catch of them. We haven't got that particular, we haven't actually found that, that groove with us yet. And that's also okay, because sometimes, a client has become a really good client because their lifestyle has changed. They're getting married, they're having a baby, and that has actually changed our relationship, because their need for a shopper has changed, and therefore they've decided that they need help with something that they didn't think that they needed help with before. So that's what's changed the nature of the relationship. So that's always a good one. But it's 30 minutes already. We are done for today. I hope everyone who's been able to watch us found this a little bit interesting or informative or helpful. If you have any other questions you want to ask, we will bring this segment back, so we can always use this in the next segment, or if you want, I can reply to you personally with any of the information. And if I'm not the right person for that, I'm absolutely sure there's someone in the ŌNCE Club community, or even outside of that can definitely help you. And I'm always happy to make that connection so you can get the best information out there. So I hope you guys will be in contact regardless. And for now, happy Friday, and I'll see you next week.